and they were policy, planning, promotion, prevention, process, and persistence. So I'm just going to go through briefly some of the initiatives that we've put forward in terms of the 6 Ps. In terms of policy, the first thing that we did was that SLT adopted that the occupational health and safety policy that would support psychological health and safety and support for mental health in the workplace. We also, as I said, we have the written wellness strategies. And we also have an accommodation policy, and it specifically states in it that in support in return to work and accommodation for staff that have mental health issues as well. In terms of planning, one of the first things that we did at the beginning is that we were looking at getting a newer, better EAP program, and that's our Employee Assistance Program. And I did provide in the handouts a little flyer of our Employee Assistance Program. So when we were looking for a new program and we did the RFP, we knew what we were looking for. We were looking for a comprehensive program that supports our wellness strategy with value-added services, things like health risk assessments. We have 2 wellness sessions per year, a wellness library, e-learning involved in that. So those are the things that we were looking for. So in the planning process, when we were looking for improving the psychological health and safety and supporting mental health in the workplace. So the next one is promotion, and this is an area that we've really done a lot of work on in raising mental health awareness. Mental Health First Aid is a 2-day program. It's been put on by the Canadian Mental Health Association. We have over 100 individuals now in the organization that are trained in mental health first aid. We also have provided Safe Talk, which is a program in suicide prevention for a lot of the staff as well. And so we've been really working on improving mental health awareness and eliminating the stigma that's associated with mental health issues. Prevention. So in terms of prevention, a couple of our initiatives, besides the wellness through the EAP, we also have our Apple committee. It's our wellness committee. And they do a fantastic job every year. There's a lot of initiatives they do in terms of promoting wellness and improving people's wellness. We host an annual health and wellness fair for staff. We have 2 exercise activity incentives per year. Activity Fest is going to be starting soon, and then in October we have Walktoberfest. And we provide, in March, free apples for the staff for Nutrition Month to promote nutrition. And we've also done some other things in terms of making nutritious smoothies in some of the workplaces, and also providing yoga and wellness sessions during lunch periods, to promote wellness and mindfulness in the workplace. In terms of process, our accommodation processes include the support for mental health. We've done a lot of research in the areas for accommodating those with mental health issues and putting strategies in place. So we're always looking at improving our processes in that area. And then the last one is persistence. And our first pillar on our wellness strategy, as I said, the second pillar is the psychological health and safety, but our first pillar is assessment and continuous improvement. So whatever we do in the terms of wellness, our first pillar, it all centers around that we need to make sure that we're always trying to improve and always evolve. Okay, So I got some time. In terms of what's next, the Road to Mental Readiness, it was created by the military, and it was later adapted for first responders. And the Road to Mental Readiness was rolled out, and then there was a new program created called the Working Mind. And the Road to Mental Readiness, I know it's sponsored and supported by the Mental Health Commission of Canada, and both the program, the Working Mind, and the Road to Mental Readiness are based on the same model. So it's the mental health continuum model. And the goals are to increase awareness with regards to mental health, reduce the stigma, recognize signs and what to do, and also self-care techniques. So we have one staff member that's trained, is a certified trainer in the Road to Mental Readiness in EMS. So we're starting to roll that out for the first responders. And for the rest of the organization, and in terms of the Working Mind, we have 3 staff members that are certified trainers. There's myself, Nicole Vansicle, and Carissa Capiter, who I mentioned earlier. So we did our 5-day Train the Trainer in that program. Excellent program. In terms of self-care techniques, there's 4 excellent self-care techniques, and since I have a couple minutes, if you'd humor me and join in with one of them with me in terms of breathing. If you could put your one hand on your stomach, one hand on your chest, and what you're going to try and do is that you want to try and breathe through your stomach, and you want to inhale for 4 seconds, hold for 4 seconds, exhale for 4 seconds, and then hold out at the end for 4 seconds. And you can keep your eyes open or closed, whatever you feel comfortable with, okay? And just stay seated on your chair. So try and breathe through your stomach, because it helps a lot. So have you. So usually it takes three cycles is usually works and helps. It can help calm you down. So these strategies that are taught in the course, including the breathing exercises, are actually used by the Navy SEALs in the States. So if you're familiar with them. So to give you some statistics, 1 in 5 people will have a mental health issue annually, and that's 45% will have a mental health issue in their lifetime. Our EAP last year was accessed 107 times. Just under 50% was due to mental health issues. So one thing about the EAP, it's not just for mental health issues. There's a whole other range of counseling involved, including like financial, legal, family and relationships, nutritional. So it's not just one area that it focuses on. So it provides support to our staff in a lot of different areas. In 2008, World Health Organization predicted that major depressive disorder will be the #1 health condition in the world by 2030, surpassing heart disease. And the annual cost to Canadian businesses due to mental health issues is estimated at $51 billion.
Trevor, do you have
and
much
questions?
More?
That's with 3 minutes to spare.
Okay. Questions? Councillor Columbus.
Yes, Trevor, just a scenario. If someone's driving their own personal vehicle, and this has nothing to do with mental health really, but it does come in your scenario. Their own personal vehicle on the job, the vehicle rolls over or it's in a crash. What's the process for that? The employee is injured. So what would the process be? Does the insurance, are they the ones look after it, or does the county look after it, or how's that all work?
Okay, through the chair. So actually that pertains to WSIB. So what happens in that situation is that because it's a vehicle incident, that the employee has a choice. They choose, it's an election form. And that's a unique situation where they're driving a vehicle that they can go through insurance or they can go through WSIB.
Okay, so there's two options.
Yeah.
My second question, Mr. Chairman, is you're talking about psychological help and mental illness, and probably the most traumatic time for an employee is when they get fired. So how does your division handle an employee that ends up with a mental health issue that has been terminated?
So with regards to terminations, right, there's a certain way that to do them that you have to be, respectful, and you have to be empathetic, and the way that you do it is very important in terms of how you do that. If Candy wants to elaborate on that, then that's fine, but you have to be very mindful of that in the way that you do terminations. But in terms of if there's a issue with regards to that, that they always have the choice if they want to call WSIB and put in a claim. That would be up to the WSIB to decide whether or not they want to approve it. But that's it.
So that would be on a termination?
Yeah, on a termination.
So the county would cut that employee loose then, and you wouldn't be assisting them through a mental health issue if you terminated them?
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair, if I could. Yes, certainly, Councillor, in the situations that you've been referring to, on several occasions we do offer extended employee assistance programming coverage to those individuals in those situations.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Height.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to the deputation, maybe I missed it, but what does EPA stand for, or EAP?
Oh, the Employee Assistance Program?
Okay, and it was accessed 107 times, I see?
Yes.
How effective has this program been? Has there been any reduction in sick time or injury reporting for Norfolk County?
Well, as I said in my first presentation, that in the last 3 years, we basically, in the sick time, that it has plateaued. We're not increasing the amount of hours, so that does speak to how well we are managing our sick claims. The fact that it doesn't continue to increase. Okay. It's hard to say that the exact effect. To say it's more anecdotal, but.
Okay, and what other measurables would you use to check the effectiveness of this program and the wellness strategy in itself?
Through the chair, in terms of effectiveness, we will look at our benefits claims is one of the things that we look at as well. And we have seen a reduction, right, in the last year in the use of drugs prescribed for mental health. So that's one of the things we look at. We're also, besides absenteeism and WSIB claims as well.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Black.
Just sort of along that same line, it is interesting that, I don't know if absolutely everything can be quantified, but By reducing mental health, Trevor, would you not have a more productive and happier employee, which kind of spreads around and spews over onto, it's the morality, it boosts morality to have a happy employee. Is that something that can be measured? I don't know if it is, but I'm sure if you reduce mental health, you'll achieve those goals of like happiness and more productivity, but I don't know if you can actually quantify it.
Through the chair, yeah, there are surveys, there are engagement surveys that are available that we haven't done, but that's one way of measuring if you have engagement surveys and as well that we have done a survey with regards to mental health called Guarding Minds at Work. We've just done our first one. So in terms of looking at that, it's supposed to be done every 2 years. So we're going to be doing it every 2 years. So that in itself, right, will be able to gauge, right, how well the organization is doing in regards to meeting the standards of psychological health and safety. But it also speaks to how, for lack of a better word, happy the staff are in the workplace.
Yeah. Just wondered, does that do councillors get to take that, or do we do that at election time?
The survey? We did send the survey out to all staff. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Councilor Sonnenberg.
Chair. Trevor, could you describe to me, I'm going to refer to our people who work in our roads division. They call them tailgate meetings every morning before they go out onto a job. How extensive are they, and how long do they take, and how often do they happen? Mm-hmm. Like every time a crew goes out to cut down a tree, do they have to have a special safety meeting on tree cutting, or put in a culvert, how to dig and not to dig? I mean, how elaborate, how extensive are these safety meetings for our roads people?
Through the chair, going back to due diligence, what you need to do is you need to do a safety talk that makes sure that you cover the hazards that are involved. So you have to take the reasonable precaution and protection of the worker. So it depends what it is, right? If there's something that's relatively minor and there's few hazards, then the talk will be shorter. But if it's something that there's a lot of things, plus the severity too, if there's a potential for like a fatality, like working around power lines and that, or doing excavations, right? Things like that where there's potential, then the safety talks would be more elaborate. So it could be no safety talk should be more than 5 minutes. It's just really, it's supposed to be bullet points, because if you start to get into too much information, then it's right hard. It's just supposed to be review. Remember this, and this.
Lee, do you want to add something to that, please?
Through the chair to council, I think that Trevor did a nice job covering it. It's not, the tailgate sessions are not meant to be training sessions. They're meant to be refresher. Mm-hmm. If somebody hasn't done that work before, they shouldn't be on that crew that day without the appropriate training. And it's just, we do a huge variety of different activities in each one of them. So it's really just meant as a refresher to remind them of all of the safety matters for today's work. So it's not meant to be a full-time training session, and if they need, chainsaw training or any kind of other training, they would do that separately from a tailgate talk.
I understand safety, but if I was on a roads crew and I had to be refreshed every morning before I went out on the job, I would find that demeaning. I've been working at this job for 20 years. I know how to run a chainsaw. I know how to run a shovel. I know how to back up a truck. I know all this. Why do I have to be reminded over and over and over? To me, it would be degrading. I'm sorry.
Well, through the chair, and I may have spoken to this in the first presentation. I had mentioned that 85% of injuries are caused by an unsafe act. And so one of the main root causes that causes an unsafe act, one of them is complacency. So the fact that, oh, I've done this job for 20 years, right? It doesn't matter if you've done it for, if it's your first day or if you've been there for 20 years. Everybody needs reminders, right? Even myself. And I tell a really good story in orientation, but I don't have time to go through it today. But of myself walking upstairs without using the railing. So everybody needs reminders, and it shouldn't be taken as demeaning in any way. Because as I said, if you've ever had somebody, right, that's close to you that's had a major injury or fatality in the workplace, right, it's devastating. So the more that we can do to help remind people to prevent those unsafe acts, then the better and the lower the risk.
Lee, further?
Through the chairman to council, based on the number of people on most of our roadside crews, it's also a requirement of the Ministry of Labour that those safety talks take place on a daily basis.
Thank you. Further? Trevor, thank you for all the information you've conveyed to us, and thank you very much.
Thank you.
We're going to move on to staff reports, and you may think I'm out of whack, but I've been told that Chris Baird is going to handle this one. It's staff report PW 17-19, Oak Street and Evergreen Hill Student Crossing Budget Amendment. Chris.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I'd offer to present this report on behalf of Lee Robinson, just because it does involve school crossing guards, which are administered through our budget, our operation. So just very briefly, Council had received a letter from a local resident, a student that was seeking some form of solution to the difficulties in crossing safely the Evergreen Hill Road. As per our policy, our engineering colleagues conducted the traffic assessments. That's attached to page 17 of the report. The warrant criteria, which is Council's established process, suggests that the warrants for a school crossing guard, a new school crossing guard, have been met. So the purpose of the report is to bring this forward to you. There is a cost for this. Of course, if Council does support it, we are midway through the school year, and as such, to bring a new crossing guard on would be approximately $4,800 for the remainder of the school year, and for the remainder, of 2017, and then an additional $8,000 every year thereafter. So I'm glad to answer any questions.
Okay, I have Councillor Black and Councillor Wells. Councillor Black.
Mr. Chairman, I'm up there twice a day. I take my daughter up there, drop her off, and pick her up at night. I see what the problem is, and I'm sure everybody else going by there sees it. I really am not convinced the crossing guard is going to be a solution to that spot. Like, you put a crossing guard there, kids, parents park across the road. Kids are going across the road in front of the school. They're not going to go down to the crossing guard. It's just not going to happen. I can't support the staff recommendation. And even to put a four-way stop there, I spoke to Lee just as we came in, and it's an intermittent situation that occurs in the morning, and it's a frenzy. And it occurs at 3 o'clock, and it's a frenzy. And then once it's done, it's done. So I'm not even sure if a four-way stop would be appropriate, but if we did anything, I think that's what really needs to be done. Now, I really don't have any question, but maybe Mr. Baird or Lee Robinson could respond to my own observations there and potential solution, because I do get phone calls from some of the residents in the area. So And it's not just the kids at the school, it's all of the above. It's the bus drivers and the teachers and the residents in the area, but it's just for that brief time, morning and evening or afternoon. So I don't know if Chris want to...
Through the chair, I'll defer to Lee for the engineering comments related to the need for an all-way stop. However, school crossing guards are just that. They deal with those peak times, so the 8 to 9 o'clock and 3 to 4 o'clock. I don't know the exact times. They are adjustable depending on where the kids are coming from. But that's really it. And the fact is that the warrants do justify some form of control to help the kids cross the traffic. So with that, maybe leave with public or always stop or other traffic measures.
Through the chairman to council, with respect to an all-way stop, we did run the warrants for an all-way stop, and it is clearly not warranted in this case. It does not meet the warrants. I believe Councillor Black has articulated that in this particular case, it's really 2 times a day during the school year, on only Monday to Friday, and as such, that further supports the justification for not putting in a 4-way stop, because the 4-way stop would change the traffic patterns in the area outside of the times that are actually causing any trouble. But again, that's a decision for council to make with respect to that. But to be clear, the warrants are not met, nor are they close to being met for a requirement for a 4-way stop in the area.
Mr. Chairman, it doesn't seem like there really is any solution but the status quo unless, we do put a 4-way stop there. But if somebody else has got something else to say, I guess I'll wait.
Councillor Wells?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I think I am correct that this crossing guard is being recommended to service the students, the high school students at Holy Trinity. Am I correct?
I would suggest yes.
That is correct.
That is correct.
Mr. Chair, maybe I'm old. I guess I am. We're suggesting that high school students cannot cross the road without the aid of a crossing guard. I understand when the young people are there, at elementary school, they get excited and so on and so forth. But we're talking about young adults here. They're worse. Well, Mr. Chair, if they are worse, we're missing something, Mr. Chair. Honestly, how much protection can we offer people? Don't they have some responsibility? And we're looking at 15, 16, 17, and 18-year-old young people who are going to be adults soon. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Moving on to Councillor Height and then Councillor Black.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Mr. Baird, it's mentioned in your warrant criteria that safety device, that there are none present, and so there was a value of 1 assigned to that. What would a safety device be that would get that 1 to a 0?
Through the chair, it would be a multi-way stop. It could be a traffic signal. It could be a school crossing guard that would be, closer to greater than 400 meters away. None of those exist. So there's no mechanism.
So it doesn't include a sign?
No, it would be something through the chair that would require motorists to obey, some sort of regulatory signage or signal, something to that effect.
So if we put up a sign that said motorists don't run over the small children, that would be a 0?
I don't believe there's a sign in the quiver of tools that are available to that effect. There is not. The regulatory signs, and again, Lee, stop signs, school crossing guards, police officer, and a red traffic signal and a school bus flashing light. Those are the main, if not the only, mechanisms to get a motorist to stop.
Okay, thank you. Because, I noticed on the criteria that the student volume here, we're dealing with 21 students in the total count, and that's AM and PM. And if it was less than 20 students, we wouldn't be having this discussion right now.
That's true through the chair. You're correct. It's just where the cutoff is. 1 student.
Thank you.
Councillor Black and then Mayor Luke.
Just on the school crossing guard, it's not just the kids crossing there, it's the traffic trying to get out It's the buses that are lined up and, it's all of that. I'm going to try a motion, and even though maybe might not be 100% behind it, we'll see what everybody else says, but just to receive the report as information and direct staff to install a four-way, all-way stop at the corner of Evergreen and Oak Street.
Mayor Luke.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and I read this report, I didn't know what to think. I have to admit, and I use this street a lot coming in and out of Simcoe. That's the way I come in every day. And certainly there's just not even so much, in my opinion, the morning. It's the evening, the afternoon, that the cars are lined up on both sides in front of the school. Buses all leaving at once, in all directions, I might add. It's a regional high school, it's 1,200 students. And very clearly, Mr. Chair, I want to say that we are concerned about student safety. There's no question. If the kids aren't safe, not too much else matters. Could I ask Mr. Baird, through the chair, how many students were actually noted as crossing? I know this is a less than, greater than scale, greater than 21, but less than 74. Is there an actual count?
Through the chair, on page 17, Mayor Luke, it indicates the student count total for the AM and PM was 21. That was done by engineering staff. So they did observe during those crossing times 21 students. And as Councillor Heidt had indicated, fortunately or unfortunately, if it was one less, the criteria would have scored 1 point versus 2. But again, the information's there provided. We have to have some sort of threshold or baseline to justify a point score.
Okay, and I know that I did read the count number and I couldn't find it, and there it is under the range, so my apologies for that question. I did go over this. Mr. Chair, it seems to me that one peak period, maybe 15 minutes, 10 minutes, maybe less, Monday to Friday afternoon, seems to me a four-way stop is not warranted. Seems to me that a cross guard is not warranted. I don't know, for the most time, I observe the students coming to and from Holy Trinity using the sidewalks. I have gone southbound on Oak towards this intersection and have seen 2 high school students on one side on the sidewalk and 3 walking on the road on the other side. And there are sidewalks on both sides of Oak Street. And again, kids are going to do what they're going to do, whether you provide them with sidewalks or whatever. So, it is so borderline here. It is so just squeaking across. I think the biggest problem that I see here is students leaving the school to the corner of Oak and Evergreen Hill Road, and some of them have to cross twice. Some of them will cross and go across Evergreen to the corner onto the Oak Street and then cross again over to the south. But I don't know the counts. I'm all for safety. I really question spending $8,000 if we can't find a solution for 21 secondary school students. And I don't think there's a problem in the morning. I know one thing, there is an absence of school crossing ahead. You drive down the highway, you see the yellow sign with a couple of students carrying. There's nothing that I'm aware of coming from the west, around the S-bend on Evergreen and coming onto that before you hit the 40-kilometer, starts just on the east side of that intersection. So I don't know if better signage could be done. I don't think there's any indication of school kids crossing the street on either end of Oak Street, either coming up to that intersection from the north or from the south, and I don't even know if there's any on Evergreen coming from the east, other than the reduction to 40. And Lee Robinson, she's talking with the expert over there, Sean, might be able chime in. You know, sometimes you drive it twice a day and you don't even know what's there, but I don't think there's any of those signs that I see at other schools. I don't see any crosswalk, and I don't suppose we can put a crosswalk marking there. No, how silly of me to even suggest that, because it's not a legal crosswalk. But often where kids cross, there's some indication that this is a student crossing, and there's not here. So I don't know if $8,000, well, yeah, is it going to make it safer? Yes. But is there another way we can make it safer? Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't know.
County manager's next. Go ahead.
Good afternoon. Firstly, I want to say thank you for extending your trust in me in awarding this position, and I'll do everything I can to earn that in the coming years. That being said, if I may be so bold as to provide you with an alternative suggestion, the traffic count is 21. You have a metric in place, beg pardon, that says at 20, that's your line. Over that, you have some community safety concerns. The challenge here might be that we have data from only one day, that being February the 21st of this year, and you don't know if that was an average day or a below average day, or if school got out early, or if there was a sports game that kept more people at school after 4. You see my point. Before council considered making a decision, you might consider referring this back to staff so that additional study and more robust data can be provided to you. I would point out that there's certainly a very valid point been made about the age of the students, but that being said, none of us know if any of the students using that crosswalk have developmental disabilities, physical challenges, any other reasons. And certainly if it turns out that you have a traffic count that is above 20 based on multiple days of data, and I think staff could obtain that for you relatively cheaply, we literally just have to sit someone in the intersection for those relevant hours. If you exceed your threshold, there's one of the criteria used when it comes to budget time is legal risk and liability. And certainly, if you have an intersection that exceeds your traffic count and suggests that you ought to have a crossing guard there, I would give that serious thought and consideration, if only for liability perspectives. You are the road authority, and you are going to make a decision as road authority. So I just commend those comments for your consideration at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. The new county manager made my point exactly, as did Mr. Meisner. This all has to do with due diligence. We don't know what the perfect solution is, but we have to do something. And if students cross, like Councillor Black says, like a herd of sheep, just helter-skelter, willy-nilly here and there, and something happens, we could be sued for $1 billion. If, on the other hand, if we at least have a crossing guard there, and the students choose not to cross where the guard is, well, then we can say we at least tried. That's our due diligence. So I'm going to support a crossing guard. It's a small price to pay. All the other things like traffic signals, they're there for 23 hours a day that you don't need them. Crossing guard is there on an as-need basis. So that's the road I'm going to go with the crossing guard. So I won't be supporting the motion on the floor. Thank you.
Councillor Brunton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First question I have is, and I frequent that intersection all the time. I'm like Mayor Luke, I live out there, so I'm through there 2 or 3 times a day. And the interesting situation I see is that you probably need even though it's a 4-way stop at Queen and Evergreen, you probably need a traffic guard there more important than you do at Oak Street because of the volume of people that use that intersection with the 4-way stop. The Oak Street intersection, I can't support it. And the reason being, most of those kids come across Evergreen on the east side and walk down the road. Very few of them use the sidewalk, which is on the west side. They don't even use the sidewalk. My last, I guess, question, this warrant that they come up with, is that our own warrant, or is that something that's provided by the ministry?
Through the chair, Councillor Brunt, that is council's approved policy. The warrant's been in place for about 12 or 13 years now.
So it's not like a traffic warrant for a signalized intersection?
No,
by
that's
any means?
correct. This is specially done to justify all our guard installations.
Yeah, so maybe, and I noticed some dates in there. It says last count, 2009 for the AADT, 2,900. Maybe some of those things are outdated. So I certainly can't support spending $8,000 up there for, and again, I frequent that intersection, and doesn't matter how you do it. The kids are going to do what they want at that intersection. So thank you.
Councillor Columbus.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I like our county manager's suggestion that we need more data, more than one day. I mean, this could have been a day they wrote exams or like the sports activities, who knows? Maybe we don't have, maybe the numbers should be higher. The other thing I've noticed there, I don't frequent it as often as some others, but I have noticed where parents drop the students off on the north side of Evergreen Hill Road and they get out the passenger side and walk across. So probably some of these students are doing that, and maybe they should be directed, the parents should be directed to drop them off in the parking lot in front of the school rather than on the road. I see Councillor Black shaking his head. No. And if we had a crossing guard there, where would he stand? There's no crosswalk there, so usually our crossing guards are at crosswalks. So I guess, Mr. Baird, do we put a crosswalk in, or do they just stand out in the open area somewhere?
Lee?
Through the chairman to council, should council approve a crossing guard, we will implement a school crossing with a painted crosswalk. We would.
Councillor,
Would that then be legal? Because we were told one time that was illegal.
Through the chairman to council, it is legal if we put a crossing guard in the crosswalk. So if, for example, council chose to implement a crossing guard in that area, and in 4 years there was no longer the warrants and we chose not to do that, we'd have to remove that crosswalk at that time. It would have the posting, we would sign it accordingly for the school crossing, and that would require a crossing guard, and that would make it quote unquote legal. But the whole point of those crosswalks is they either need to have a crossing guard or they need to not be there.
Mr. Chairman, in the end, I support the county manager's suggestion to gather more information, get more statistics.
Councillor Black.
And I appreciate what Councillor Columbus is saying, but if you go there and watch, I mean, and as the mayor has indicated, the buses are just lined up all the way around the school. The whole school is just lined with buses. You try to get in there, and the county manager has indicated accessibility. You've got some of those mini buses for accessibility. It's a real nightmare there just for that brief time. And that's why a lot of the parents go out front and on both sides, and kids are flying across the road. So, maybe, because I'm not 100%, don't like the idea of the crossing guard. I don't think it'll work, but yes, there's the liability issue. And then the idea of a four-way stop yes, it would work for that period of time, but then you've got all the other time when maybe you don't need it. So maybe it would be better if we just deferred this. So the motion that I had on the floor.
You want to withdraw it or defer?
No, well, I think I'm hearing that maybe it requires a little bit more thought, and then the county manager is, he's given us his first piece of advice. So I would like to take his first piece of advice, make him feel good, like he's been productive right off the bat. And so
are you going to
I think
withdraw your motion and make a new motion?
Just to defer the report. So yeah, take the motion off, defer the report back to staff for further information.
Got it?
Okay?
Okay, I'll have the clerk read what we have.
Thank you. Through the chair to committee, that the report PW 1719 Oak Street and Evergreen Hill Road student crossing be received as information, and that the staff report be referred to staff for additional study and allow for more data to be presented to committee for further consideration.
Councillor Brunton.
Just a quick question. Is there any you say this warrant was developed, Mr. Baird, by our own staff or whatever. Is there any other criteria from the ministry or other municipalities that have the similar type of warrant? That it seems odd that for, I think I read 21 students that we're going to recommend a crossing guard, and I just find that to be very low. So is there anything out there other than what you've developed?
Through the chair, I'm not specifically aware. Again, I defer to Lee. I was involved in developing this when I assumed my role 13 years ago, because we didn't have a policy, and council routinely got requests, and we needed to develop some sort of tool that would provide some justification, that we just couldn't put them everywhere because there are a considerable cost. Our school crossing guard budget's about $200,000 a year. So we looked at where they were established and developed the criteria around that, and where previously it's just not justifiable. Of course, children's safety is paramount, but the tool we have before you is the best that we have. I'm not sure what they do in other areas. We did look at, through a program review previously, we looked at removing school crossing guards where there was an active traffic signal, and the council of the day subsequently rejected that proposal, and we continue to use this tool when requests come forward. So it's not to say it can't be modified further, but I think Mr. Cribb's suggestion is look at another day. There may be considerably more, or there may be considerably less, but we do need to do it before the finish of the school year, so we have some valid numbers. Obviously, we can't do this in July.
Well, I guess if we're going to defer it, would it be in order to ask you to also look and see what else might be out there in terms of a model warrant? Is that too much to ask? We're going to defer it anyway, so.
No, I don't think through the chair that's not too much to ask. And we have our peer network. We could do an e-blast and ask them what they do for justifying school crossing guard requests. And if there's something, a best of breed, maybe we could look at bringing that forward. But I think we've got some pretty good direction at this point.
Thank you.
Further? If not, I'll have the clerk read the motion. So it'll go. There's going to be some money, I would think, that is going to be put into this, so that's why we need the motion to do it. So, okay?
Through the chair to committee, moved by Councillor Black, that the report PW 1719 Oak Street and Evergreen Hill Road student crossing be received as information, and that staff report PW 1719 Oak Street and Evergreen Hill Road student crossing be referred to staff for additional study and allow for more data to be presented to committee for further consideration.
All those in favor? Those opposed? That is carried. Moving on to page 19, staff report PW 1721, Meisner Dam Bridge removal. Lee.
Through the chairman to council, when council authorized staff to proceed with the rehabilitation work for the Meisner Dam, staff had indicated at that time that we would be bringing back a report to council seeking direction with respect to some of the remnant structures that are still in the area. Subsequent to that, there was also deputation that came forward to council, and as a result, we have incorporated the deputation's request as well as made staff's recommendation. Staff are recommending that we proceed with included in the work that we will be doing, that we remove the remnant structures and we do not spend any additional funds to remediate the remedial structures or any of that sort of thing, and I'd be more than happy to answer any questions.
Councillor Columbus.
Mr. Chairman, this structure is seriously deteriorated, and it could cost as much as $435,000 to fix it. So I will move the recommendation as printed in the report.
Further, Councillor Wells.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I must say I was quite surprised when I looked at the figure of $335,000 to $435,000 for repairs. Where would that money come from, Mr. Chair?
Lee?
Through the chairman to council, we did not investigate possible funding sources, given that staff are, it's an aesthetic feature only, and it has no structural significance to the structure. So we had not investigated that. I would assume, like the remainder of it, it will be funded from debt.
I think that's the point I was trying to make, Mr. Chair. I think we had a deputation here suggesting that this would be a wonderful thing to leave that as an observation platform, if I remember correctly. But in order to have an observation platform, Mr. Chair, at $335,000 to $435,000 plus whatever overs, so we're looking at $500,000. That's a pretty serious commitment to make for an observation center. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yes? James?
Through the chair, if I can just expand on what Ms. Robinson stated. The funding for the Meisner Dam rehabilitation will be coming from the roadway reconstruction reserve, and the debt financing is a very small portion of it, of about $110,000. And just to confirm, I just want to make sure council understands, this is not a $500,000 project. It's a $1.5 million project, because there is a $1.1 million expenditure for the original rehabilitation.
Mayor Luke.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I'm going to certainly support the motion. I think the deputation brought forward at the appropriate time, something for us to look into and consider. Staff has done so and brought it back in a timely fashion. Thank you. And I think I too, along with I too had the same reaction as Councillor Wells. I don't think any of us figured we'd be into $350,000, $400,000. I am sure that our motive or our goal is to repair that dam and make it secure, thus saving Silver Lake. And this would have been a nice plus, but there may be other ways down the road to providing viewing opportunities of the dam other than spending this amount of money on top of the 1.1 that we have already committed. And we don't know yet if that 1.1 is going to do the job. I'm hoping it will, but we don't know. And I see Lee shaking her head up and down, so stay tuned. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Councillor Wells?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And Mr. Chair, again, I want to emphasize that we put $1.1 million. This is for the Port Dover Maple Leaf and the person that is going to publish this. We put aside $1.1 million for repairs to that dam. That's what we did. This is over and above that. I don't want any confusion here, because people will say, oh, when you already had the money in the budget, why didn't you use it? No, we have money in the budget for repairs. This is in addition to that, so another $500,000. And that's why I will be supporting the motion that is on the floor, that we do not put aside another $500,000 for this platform. Thank you, Mr.
Further, Councillor Black?
I'll be supporting the recommendation, and you know, it would be nice. I'd love to be able to support absolutely everything out there, including a lovely observation deck. But you know, we have so many other higher priorities, like our roads and so many infrastructure items, that it's just difficult to do this type of aesthetic work, even though you'd like to do it. And I think, I'm not sure who said it, maybe Councillor Wells, there may be some other opportunities around the lake through community services. You know, I certainly would like to have seen some trails around there, or benches or something like that, which would certainly act as observation areas. So, you know, maybe there could be something else a little bit cheaper and incorporated into existing budgets. Thank you.
Councillor Wells have moved that report PW 1721 Meisner Dam Bridge removal be received for information, and that the subject to engineering design and regular approvals, the bridge remnants be removed. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Moving on to page 22, staff report PW 7-16, removal of 3 month removal of 3-month free water for new construction. Your turn, sorry.
Through the chairman to council, as staff reported to council previously, we have a existing procedure in place where construction projects do not receive a bill or a water meter for the first 3 months that they've been put in place, and then after that they simply pay the standby charge for the water and the wastewater that they are using, and that can be anywhere up to 8, 9, 10 months after that was originally done. So staff have brought forward this report recommending that we change our policy and that all new construction be billed from the time that the water meter is installed, and the water not be turned on until such time as the water meter is being installed, so that we are able to recover the full cost of the water that's being generated. As it stands right now, we are unable to provide for the unaccounted water. We do not know how much water is being used. We don't believe it's all being used in a very safe, or not safe, in a very environmentally responsible way. So it is artificially driving up some of our water costs. And I'd be happy to answer any questions on the report.
Councillor Wells.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, certainly there's no doubt that this is quite a change in policy if this passes, and I certainly am in favor of that. I'm just wondering, have our developers, they obviously would have seen this report, it's been around for a couple of weeks. Did we have any knocking of the door and gnashing of teeth and shooting of the Miss Robinson as the result of this report?
Through the chairman to council, as you're aware, I have been away for the last 2 weeks, and I did actually go through all of my emails this morning looking for any comments about that, and I have confirmed with staff that we have had almost no comments from the development community with respect to this report.
Councillor Height.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I like this report. We're saving money for our water and wastewater customers, so I'll move the recommendation.
Councillor Columbus, then the mayor.
This question to Lee, Mr. Chairman. So the way I understand it is right now, as soon as the water supply goes to that empty lot that's being built on, they are charged $46.28 per month without a meter?
Through the chairman to council, no, they are not. The water service is there. Once they request the water service to be turned on, they then have 3 months where they don't receive any bill at all, and after 3 months, then they start getting the standby charges.
Okay. Why not just look at starting the standby charges as soon as the water is to the lot line, and forget about metering it, because meters are going to freeze up in the wintertime. And then you've got a real problem. I know the report says that the developer or the contractor has to protect the meter, but I mean, they're going to be freezing up, aren't they? How do you keep a meter from freezing?
Through the chairman to council, it's been my personal experience in my former municipality is that if they've connected in the meter and they're building it, they're actively using the water and it hasn't been a problem. I am aware of, in the 11 years when I was with the County of Brant, we only had 1 meter freeze as a result of that. So I don't believe it to be a significant issue in the industry with respect to that. They're typically, if they're putting a water meter in, they're going to be paying charges, they're going to be paying fees associated with that. So they typically wouldn't put it in until they need the water, and then they'll be using the water as part of their construction process.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor Luke.
Well, Mr. Chair, thank you. My question was partially answered by by Councillor Columbus's question to this. And when I'm looking at the financial services comments, that's where I kind of raise my eyebrows, thinking that I certainly understand the elimination of the standby. But when I read the first paragraph, based on the possibility of recouping $10,000 in a single season for 3 months, I read this, Mr. Chair, and whether James or Lee would like to comment, I read it that a person receiving water, the residents themselves, would get 3 months of free water, and they talk about $79 on an average, say 80, $240 a month. In fact, are there residents in the new dwellings that are getting 3 months of free water? That's how this paragraph reads to me. And then the next paragraph certainly explains, to my opinion, more clear about the difference in the standby charge. But I need clarification on that first paragraph, please.
Sure. Through the chairman to council, I believe that there just may be a little bit of confusion in the wording.
Yes.
They're referring to the typical residential bill. It isn't being billed to the residents. It's the rate that they're paying. They're paying the residential rate as opposed to a commercial rate.
Okay.
So the number that they used for the calculation was the residential rate.